Hey everyone, thank you for joining me. I'm a guy called Joe and this is Bootstrapping Tools. Let's Build, where we build applications to help scrappy bootstrappers just like yourself figure out how to overcome some of the hurdles that they're facing when they're building their company, or even if they're just trying to make themselves more efficient. Now, if you do like our videos, make sure to hit that like button. It's the best way to support our channel and help us continue making content for you to help you overcome all the hurdles that you're facing. We have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel, so make sure to check that out as well. We cover all different types of low-code and no-code applications out there, such as Retool, Google Sheets, Google App Scripts, as well as Google Data Studio, and many others. You don't see what you're looking for up here, feel free to shoot an email over to feedback@bootstrapping.tools. We'll be happy to take a look at that application and make a video just for you. Now, in today's topic, we're going to be showing you how to sync updates to your Shopify store and also to your Postgres database. And with that, we're going to be using Retool as our low-code application. We're going to hook that up to our Shopify API. And then we're also going to send that data over to our Postgres database, which we're hosting on Google Cloud SQL. You don't have to use Google Cloud SQL if you have something else. The important part is that you've already connected that over to your Retool account. So let's actually dive into our Retool app. We have something that we just set up recently to help sync data between the Shopify API and your database. If you missed that, I'll leave a link in the description so that you can watch that video as well. So in that last video, that last part, what we did was we set up API calls to get all the products and then API calls to get all the variants. And then we also created resource queries to upsert that data into our database, which allows us to query that database and join those tables to do whatever you need with that data. So in today's video, what we're going to show you is we're going to add in a way for you to edit this data and then send those updates over to both the Shopify store via the Shopify API, and then also send that data over to your database at the same time so you can keep both databases synced with the same exact data and you don't have to worry about things getting out of sync. So we're only going to be working with these fields over here, and we're going to just cover updating the product information. And the first thing we're going to do here is select your table, and we actually have this table labeled as all products. And then underneath here, we're going to create a custom column here. And this column is going to open up a modal. So go in here, double click the new custom column that you just created. We're just going to call this column edit. And then the column type, you're going to choose a modal. That way it opens up a nice little window that you can update your information in. So now we have that all set up. You can actually freeze that column over to the left. You can align that to the center. When we exit out of that, you'll see that we have this column. And then let's give that column a word over here so that you can click on it to open up the modal. When we click on that, it'll open up a little modal over here, which you can start injecting some of the information that we want. So first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and put in the product ID. So we're going to use a text field over here. We'll put that up top. And then within this text field, let's say the height is going to be fixed. We can make this a little bit bigger. And then we're going to say product ID. So we're going to use this as a label actually. So let's give these two asterisks on the ends of it so that it bolds it. And we're going to take this and then we're going to copy it down. And we're just going to put it right next to each other. And now for the value over here, since we already have the information from below, what we can do is all products.selectedRow.data.id. And you want to use selected row here because the information that you have is based on when you click the edit button. And actually this is giving us a little bit of an error here saying that it has to be a string instead of a number. You can just say dot to string with the open and close parentheses so that you call that function. And that'll display the information just fine. Okay, so let's actually make this label align to the left so that's nice and pretty. And now we're going to add a bunch of additional fields below it so you can edit some of the information. You can't edit the handle, so we're going to ignore that one, but we'll do the title, the vendor, the description, and everything else that makes sense. So we're going to first start with the title. So we're going to use the text input over here, drag it over into your modal. And let's align that with the product ID so it's nice and neat. And we'll extend this all the way to the end. And we're going to hide the label because we're going to use the same label as we did before so that everything is nice and aligned together. So for this product, let's change this value over to title. And then in this one, we're going to put the status in here. So for this text input field, we're going to make the default value equal to the selected row of the table. So all products.selected row.data dot title. And that should just say Adidas Classic Backpack, the same one that we selected over here in the table. And then for the status, we're going to use a drop down or selector. So just searching the components for a drop down, we're going to do a single select here. And then we're going to drop that right below our input field. And same thing as before, we're going to just extend that all the way to the end. And then we're going to remove the label because we don't need to display it. And then the values that we want here is going to be based on Shopify's needs, lowercase active and then inactive. And we're going to set the initial value to the selected row. So all products have selected row, status. And you notice here that these labels are a little bit small, so we can increase the size of that just a little bit so that it lines up neatly with our selections, our input fields. So now we have both of those. Let's actually name this a little bit better. So instead of text input, let's call this edit. So we'll just prepend that with edit and we'll call this title. And then for this select one, we're going to call this edit status. Okay, and now we're going to add in a rich text editor. Just go ahead and search for that component, rich text editor. Drop that in. And this could be full width. It's pretty clear. I mean, it's going to be a description. Okay, and then we're going to default this value over to the description that we're getting back from the table. So same thing, select all products, select the row.data dot description. And it'll populate right in here. So now we're going to take the label that we have already placed and we're going to paste it down below the rich text editor. So once you have that, let's go ahead and put a couple of more here because I think we're going to be using a few of these. Actually, we don't need the panel down below over here, so let's hide that for now. Let's make one more. And then this one is going to be for the vendor. This one is going to be for product type. And then this one is going to be for tags. So these are all text fields. So go ahead and copy the edit title. And then we'll just paste that in here. And we'll have to rejigger the display and the layout over here just a little bit, but that's okay. No harm, no foul. Move this up. And now we're going to take this and copy it down 2 more times. All right, so we have edit title 2. We're going to rename that to edit vendor. And then instead of title, we're going to select vendor in here. And then for this one, we'll say product type. And then we'll default that value over to the product type. And then for this last one, it'll be tags. So tags, and this will be tags. All right, awesome. Now that we have all this set up, let's add in one button. And this is the button that we're going to use in order to actually trigger the call that we need to both the API and also the database. So let's rename the button text over to save changes. And then we can say this button is to save changes. All right, awesome. So now that we have this, it's time to update our query so that we have one to make an API call over to the Shopify API, and then also to send data over to our SQL database, our Postgres database. So let's open up that panel again using the tools up top over here. And we can expand this because you don't need to see the UI anymore. And with the Shopify API folder, let's create another folder for SQL. So we'll call this Postgres. And let's move our upsert queries into there. Just keep this nice and neat. And then we're going to create another folder for helpers, because we're going to need a set of helpers over here to manipulate some of that data to help us format it the way that we need to send over to the Shopify API as well as the SQL database. And it'll be cleaner for us to use one script in order to create that payload, as opposed to having two of them that do roughly the same thing. So over here, we're also going to create another resource query. And that resource query is going to be in the Shopify API. And then we're going to call this put product update. So let's go over to our Shopify API reference. So we have product up here, something like that. And then the one that we want is this statement over here, updates a product. So when we click on that, we can see that we're required to do a put statement, a put request over to this endpoint, which includes the product ID. So copy that, and let's go back over to our Retool app. And then within here, we're going to paste that endpoint, and we're going to change the action type to a not a post action, a put action. And then we're going to change this product ID. Instead of doing that, we're going to use the selection or that field that we had. So it's going to be called, I think that was just the text field 1. That value, no, that's text field. So we need text 2, and that's the ID that we want. And we can actually, here, let's make this a little better, easier to read. Let's click on this, and then we're going to call this product ID. And we update that. It updates naturally within our reference over here from text 2 to product ID. So in our body, it's going to be JSON, and then we need to pass through a key. And according to the documentation over here, it needs to be product. And then within the product is going to be the payload with all the information that we want. So going back over to our Retool app, we're going to say one of the variables that we pass through in the JSON body is going to be product. And we can't populate this just yet because we need to actually create the payload. So we're going to hit new JavaScript query. Actually, before we do that, let's save this. So new JavaScript query. And then let's put this into our helpers. And then we're going to call this update product info. So within here, this is where it gets fun, because we need to do two different sets of data because there's a slight difference in the variables that go into each. So in our code, we're going to say var payload. I'm going to set that equal to an object. And then we're going to create a Shopify payload. We're going to set that open to an object as well. And then we're going to do another one for Postgres. Same thing. We're going to set that equal to an empty object. And then within this code here, what we're going to do is we're going to identify all the fields that we want to put into the Shopify object, and then the same thing for the Postgres object. So all the objects that we want are going to be, so we'll do shopify.id, and we're going to set that equal to the product ID that we have up top. So what we'll do here is we'll say product ID dot value, and then we're going to do the same thing down the line. So let's go ahead and just copy this to save ourselves some time in writing it all out. So it's going to be ID, title, status, description, vendor, product type, and tags. So this is going to be title, this is going to be status, And then in Shopify, it's actually body HTML and not description. And that's the slight variance that we need to make. And then we have vendor. Then we have product underscore type. And then we have tags. So this is going to be edit title. This is going to be edit status. This will be edit description. Oh wait, no, that's the rich text editor. We didn't rename that yet. So rich text editor 1. Let's actually go ahead and rename that. So let's make this a little bit smaller. You can see. Open that modal back up. And then this rich text editor, click on that. And then rename this to edit description. And click out. We'll just need to update this to edit description. And the same thing goes to the vendor. I'm going to say edit vendor, edit product type, and then so on and so forth. All right, so before we go any further, let's go ahead and output this and see what it looks like. So we're going to say return Shopify. And return this. You can see in our output over here, we have all the information that is put into place. So this status is actually showing as undefined. So let's see what's going on here. Oh, because it's value.value. So we don't want that. We want just one version of that, one instance. And so we have active, we got all the information that we want. Perfect. It's a little bit bigger. And then now we're going to do the same thing for Postgres. So go ahead and copy that. And then before we input it in, we're going to say payload.shopify equals Shopify. And if we return that payload, we should see one key with all the Shopify information. So perfect. And that's what we're going to use in our API call over to Shopify. And then we're going to copy and paste all that in. And instead of saying Shopify, we're going to replace that with PG SQL. And then instead of body underscore HTML, we're going to say description because that's the field name in our database. So now we're going to do the same thing we did with the Shopify payload and adding that object in. So we're going to say PG SQL equals to PG SQL. And when we run this, we should have two keys, Shopify and Postgres. And we have that data set that we're going to need in order to inject it into our database and also the Shopify API. So let's go ahead and save this. And this is going to be run manually, which is perfect. And then this put product update is only going to run manually. And now for this product, this payload, what we're going to do is we're going to say update product info.data .shopify. And right now it's null because we haven't ran it yet. So let's save this, go back over to our update products info, hit the run button so that we have some data to preview. It only took 0.4 seconds. When we go back to our put product update, we'll see here that we have information, and that also includes the body HTML version of it instead of description. So now the next thing we want to do is within our Postgres folder, we're going to put in a new query, a new resource query, which is going to upsert a single product. So let's switch over to GUI mode. And then we're going to select the products table. And then we're going to upsert via primary key. And then we're going to set the array of updates to update over to the update products and info.data.pg SQL. And remember, this is an array, so make sure to enclose this in square brackets. And it's going to look like that. So we're going to save this, and then we're going to say upsert single product. All right, so now everything is set up exactly how we want it to be. So let's go back over to our helper, and then we're going to add in some event handlers for it. So we're going to add in one event handler that on success, we're going to run the put product update query. All right, and then we're going to add another event handler so that on success is going to run the upsert single product. I'm going to save this, and if we run it, we'll just change all the data. But before we do that, let's go ahead and make a change here. So classic backpack, let's add a hyphen edited to it, and when we preview this, we'll take a look at the Shopify, and we'll see that the title is now edited. And then if we run that, we're going to get back it's ran successfully for both of them, but the upsert single product didn't run. So let's see what the error was. When we run this, choose one key to check for conflict. Oh, you got to set the primary key value, and that's ID. So we're going to save that. Let's go ahead and run the product info script again. We got full green lights on everything. Let's go over to our playground over here. I'm going to say query select star from products. And then when we scroll down to the classic backpack, we can see that it's been edited in the database. And then if we go over to our products data on Shopify, and then we refresh this page, that first one, Adidas Classic Backpack, should update over with the hyphen edited in there. And so it did perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hook that up to our button down here. It's going to click on that, and then on the sidebar, we're going to add in an event handler, and that's going to trigger update product info. So as you make edits in here, let's say it's not an accessory anymore, it's a bag, and then backpack, Adidas, that's fine. And then when we hit the save button, we're going to see update ran successfully, update ran successfully. And if we go into our Shopify UI, we refresh the page, we're going to see the type should change to bag. And then when we run this query, and let's actually copy the ID here and just make a very targeted query where ID equals to that, and then run this, we'll see that the product type is now bags instead of accessories. So you can make this UI however you want. Let's hit the preview button over here, and we'll take a look at how this all works. So we have this, and if we want to edit, let's edit this again. Let's remove this weird data. Let's turn this back to accessories. And we're going to hit the save changes. Query successfully, 3 of them. And then let's edit the next one over here. Let's just say new description. And we're going to use this ID later, so let's copy that. And we're going to hit save changes. Okay, awesome. So let's go over to our Postgres query over here. And then instead of doing where equals, we're going to say where in. It's going to query for both of those IDs, and we'll make sure that the changes occurred. So Classic Backpack no longer has the hyphen edited in there, and it's back to accessories. And then the description for that one that we just changed is now saying new description. If we go back into Shopify, hit the refresh button, we'll see that the edited should disappear, and then the type is back to accessories. And we'll click into the Adidas Kids Stand product, we'll see that the new description is now set to new description. But that's basically it. That's how you're going to sync your changes and allow yourself a nice clean tool in Retool to update both the Shopify API as well as your database, so that you can keep both data sets synced up with the same changes that you're doing through this one UI. But if you did have any issues, feel free to drop a comment in the section below. We're happy to help. Don't be shy. Many people have reached out already, and we're always happy to help. But of course, if you did like this video, make sure to hit that like button. It's the best way to support the channel and help us make more content for you. And we're always making new videos, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and also the bell so that you get notified when we release the next video. First, I'm a guy called Joe. This is Bootstrapping Tools Let's Build. It's been a pleasure, and we're out.